Welcome to Season 12 of the Prosthetics and Orthotics Podcast. This is where we connect with experts in the field, patients who use these devices, physical therapists, and the vendors who help bring it all together. Our mission remains the same: to share stories, tips, and insights that help improve patient outcomes. Tune in and join the conversation. We're glad you're here and hope it's the highlight of your day.
Hello, everyone. My name's Joris Peels, and this is another edition of the Prosthetics and Orthotics Podcast with Brent Wright. How you doing, Brent?
Hey, Joris. I'm doing well. I don't know how it is over your way, but fall has officially started for us, and it's starting to get much cooler, and the leaves are very pretty, though.
Okay.
So when does it start getting colder out your way, or what's the temperature like now?
It's nice, actually. Well, first off, I just got back from Singapore, so I'm a bit kind of confused generally. And here it was cold when I left, or cold for here when I left in Valencia in Spain. It's like good weather for about 330, 40 days a year or something, and then it rains nonstop for the rest. So it was coldish for us, and now it's warm again. I'm wearing shorts, and it's sunny. So yeah.
When does it start getting cold in Spain, though?
It kind of doesn't.
Oh, really? So
no. Well, where we are kind of like, it doesn't really get cold, but if people start wearing like long pants around, like usually around November or something.
Okay.
But in December it can be like 25, 30 C, or even more. So it's a bit weird. The weather here is weird. I mean, last year it didn't rain for like 10 months.
Oh wow.
So it was a bit strange, but hey, usually it's very sunny and nice usually.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, we're going to try to get out there next year.
Yeah, I totally do. You should come over. Love to host you around somewhere around here. Okay, so we're doing this episode without a guest for a super special thing that we should have really attended to earlier, but I was traveling and it was difficult. And so there was a major step forward, a major administrative step forward for 3D printing and prosthetics orthotics. There was a hurdle that was a very important one, right? Right, Brett?
Yeah, Joris. I mean, this is some really, really cool stuff. And we're going to go through a lot of acronyms here. But the long and short of it is that the DME MAC, and we'll tell you what that is, and the PDAC posted on September 18th of 2025, the Additive Manufacturing Prosthetic Devices Correct Coding. And really, it's two sentences with one comma that potentially has the chance of changing the way prostheses are made here in the future. And what it says is additive manufacturing is an acceptable fabrication technique for items that are fabricated for the individual beneficiary. The correct coding for any item must meet the HCPCS, HCPCS long description of the individual HCPCS code, along with any other published coding guidelines. And so essentially what that means is additive manufacturing is now approved as a form of manufacturing for prostheses. What this does is puts a line in the sand, especially for those big companies like Equal, Hanger, Embla, 4Motion, Autobach, the big companies, to say, hey, now we have the opportunity to really push into additive manufacturing for all prostheses. So I think it's a great option, and I think it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. So what is this PDAC thing, right? So what is it?
Yeah, so the PDAC is pricing, data analysis, and coding. Mm-hmm. And then they're also part of the Durable Medical Equipment Medicare Administrative Contractors, DME MACs. And they together make decisions, kind of policy decisions around about a bunch of things for medical, but this is specific for the prosthetic and orthotic industry. So what they do is kind of set policy, and they also try to look in the magic 8 ball, crystal 8 ball, and try to get ahead of some things, which is actually kind of interesting for the government, right? To try to get ahead of some things. And one of the neat things that I think that they have done recently, and the government gets a bad rap, but they have actually been very progressive in the way that they're looking at some of this prosthetic stuff. I think that they really have the best interests of patients in mind when it comes to that, which is a very positive thing. The last year we got a bunch of codes, or this year. So Click Medical got the adjustable codes, which is what you love. We got some robotic stuff, so to help people walk and then move people's arms, and then they just have released that they're going to be doing some more codes specifically for people with partial hands. So like we've had point designs on multiple times, and some of these multiple arm or hand manufacturers and that sort of thing are going to benefit from that. They also added pattern recognition, which is kind of a nod to machine learning, AI, and that sort of thing, which we had Blair on from CoApt. So all positive steps.
So this means that on a technology level, they're saying, "Hey, please, this is something that you're allowed to submit, but still, I need to submit individual devices and things I do as well, additionally, right?" But it's kind of like them waving a flag saying, "Yes, guys, this is like a way we want you to go, and we will." There are more approvals forthcoming, essentially, right? Or am I seeing this wrong?
Yeah. So what they're saying is, and they never had been, it had been kind of a gray area for additive manufacturing, which is why these big companies didn't really dive head into that. And now you're going to start seeing a lot of interest in it. Now, these codes, though, there's we call them HCPCS, but it stands for Healthcare Common Procedure Coding System. And man, our government, and I don't know how it is over there, but they love acronyms, and the longer, the better. But essentially what that is there are specific codes, number codes. So for instance, for a prosthesis, there's a L code called L5301, which is a below the knee molded socket satch foot endoskeletal system. So that's kind of like the base code. And then you can add codes to that to describe the type of prosthesis that you are creating. And so what they're saying is that when you are using this code, additive manufacturing definitely covers when you use this type of manufacturing. Additive manufacturing is covered when you're using these codes. Now, the reason why I say it was a gray area is that there is the idea of these devices still met many of the characteristics of these codes. It just wasn't fully defined by the government. And so there were a lot of, I would say, more independent companies and that's the reason why they dove, head first into this, is because they believed that it actually did cover additive manufacturing was part of the correct coding way to do things and the manufacturing of devices. So I think that's really the big win. Last year, they said that orthotic devices, and what they were probably meaning was foot orthoses, so 3D printed foot orthoses, were covered. But I think that there was a general understanding that if 3D printing was an acceptable form of manufacturing for these orthoses, there's precedent to move forward into the additive manufacturing realm.
Okay, he said big companies are going to take notice. People are going to be looking at this more in depth as well, just to because the chance of getting reimbursed, the chance of inventing a 3D printing device and getting that reimbursed is much higher, right?
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting discussion, because what do we say most of the time when people talk about additive manufacturing? It's just a form of manufacturing. So if you take the additive out and you just say it's manufacturing, it just makes common sense that it is going to be approved. But a lot of these larger companies were concerned that it might not be.
Okay. So now it's like full steam ahead. And how does this process work? I mean, were there a bunch of people that did this? Who's responsible for getting us this win? I think, because this is a big deal. I think
that's a great question, Joris. And I think what I want to let our listeners know is this doesn't just happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen by mistake. There were a lot of people involved in this, but those people don't necessarily want to be recognized or like to be recognized. So if you really want to know who did this work, do yourself a little bit of search or LinkedIn message around that date and time. But I can assure you that the people that were driving this don't necessarily want the credit. They just deeply care about the field or the industry of prosthetics and orthotics. But what I can tell you is that AOPA, the American Orthotic and Prosthetic Association, and their coding person, Joe McTurnan, really took the bull by the horns on this one. And you've got to remember that AOPA is our forward-facing industry representation in the government, so to speak. And they're the ones that have the relationships with the PDAC and the DME MAC. And so with Joe facilitating some of these discussions, it really birthed a nice discussion of, hey, additive manufacturing really is, a lot of times in many ways, a lateral move. Many of the same materials are used. But in fact, sometimes the outcomes are better. And so this is where things get really interesting, is because it is important for Medicare to know that we not only are pushing the field forward, but this is a great way to scale to the upcoming needs of the future populations of an aging population. So you have less people providing care for more people as it comes down the line. So very important. So the bottom line is AOPA really spearheaded this whole discussion.
Yeah, I've for one have been really amazed. Like, just generally, authorities like the FDA, for example, on the additive manufacturing more generally, has been super proactive and of informing itself, sending staffers to meetings, to interact with people, trying to get really early kind of an idea in of what they were going to do and which way they were going, to be kind of very, very clear. And of course, they want to be like the legislative thing arena for this kind of innovation, right? Because everybody goes, of course, in the for approval in the FDA rather than in Europe or somewhere else. It's of course going to be really good for America. So I think they're doing a really great job of doing this. And if they've been really hesitant, they've been really kind of very hesitant about the right things, right? So I think that's also kind of like, about, for example, infinite customization, stuff like that. People were trying to get like a kind of like on implants, they were trying to get like, oh no, this is the thinnest and the thickest it can go, and then ta-da, just approve everything. And they did some serious pushback on that. I think that's really smart. So I think they're being really, really great on this on this topic. And I think this is it's a sign of people like really, really working with industry and really trying to be very proactive. So I think that's really, really very positive.
Yeah. And I think that it throws everything back in the clinicians. And I think that's a really important part as well, is with the clinicians, it's up to us to make sure that we are coding correctly and that the devices meet the description of each of the codes based on the published coding guidelines. And I think that's a super important thing, is that it's a pretty massive responsibility. And we always say, build for what you build, code for what you bill, and bill for what you code. And while that makes sense, it's just like making any other prostheses. You want to make sure, and it's up to the clinician to make sure that everything fits in the box. So, and when I say that, for instance, an FDM socket that does not have carbon fiber in it, well, then you don't use the carbon fiber code. But that just kind of makes sense, right? So those are the types of things that are interesting. There are codes like carbon fiber and acrylic that are used in a lot of traditional fabrication, which gives you a little bit of a bump for your L codes. And those are the types of things that you've got to figure out for yourself. How are you going to fabricate? How are you going to use additive manufacturing? And you want to use additive manufacturing and the way that you fabricate be described in the way that you code and bill. And I don't know that there's a lot of gray area in that. And so I think that's, in fact, I know that there's not a lot of gray area. You have to be confident in the way that you're coding, and you just code the right way. That's, in fact, I know that there's not a lot of gray area. You have to be confident in the way that you're coding, and you just code the right way. It seems obvious, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think if you're working on different things, I think, but also like it's an expensive mistake to make, right? Because they don't reimburse you. You have to go back, do the paperwork again, all this stuff. So you want, this is something you totally want to get right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, essentially, it's fraud, right? If you're billing for something that you actually didn't provide, that's
okay. So it gets worse.
So
okay.
So that's not the right thing to do. So, and I think that's the other part is, don't take advantage of the system. Like, I've heard some interesting stories about, the additive manufacturing and how do you bill time and that sort of thing. And I would just say, if it's in the gray, you don't want to mess with that, because you don't want to mess with messing it up for other people. And that's actually what happens sometimes. Like, they will take a look at usage codes and that sort of thing. And if they find some trends, which with AI and that sort of thing now, it's very easy to find those trends. And you just don't want to be on the wrong side of that. And so you just do the right thing. And that's essentially the messaging that I would have for that.
Okay. And then, and are there more hurdles like this? I mean, does this automatically mean that insurers are going to be like way more into approving 3D printed stuff, or is that going to take a lot more convincing as well?
So most insurance companies follow what they say Medicare guidelines, but they are, I mean, that's kind of the easy way out. But a lot of times they do carve things out, and it causes issues for other things. And like, for example, right now, like people that have Medicare, which is the government insurance for people, I think it's 65 and older, that straight Medicare, it's a cut and dry thing that they have coverage. Sometimes those people will get what's called a Medicare Advantage plan through a myriad of these companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, that sort of thing. And they might get other things covered. So they don't, so they pay extra, and the government essentially pays these insurance companies to take the risk that they normally would have. But what happens is, a lot of times these Medicare Advantage plans actually are worse than straight Medicare, because they're a private company and they're trying to maximize their profit. So they are going to carve things out. They're going to make it a hassle to get the paperwork right. They will deny things after they've approved it. They will go and audit and try to take money back when they don't really have a reason to. And so it's a little bit of a mess, I would say, here in the United States for those Medicare Advantage plans. But what these L codes and that sort of thing does is give precedent to make sure that other insurance companies do start following suit in covering some of these items. But it's not as cut and dry as what you would think.
Okay, cool. And I like this because this is a real administrative step forward. It's a sign of maturity. It's a sign that, especially if AOPA gets involved, it's a sign that it's not only like 3 people promoting this. It's like it has like broad support. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this. Otherwise, they'd be trying to get something else approved. So I think this is also a good sign of the in the eyes of the industry and regulators stuff that the maturity of additive is improving. And it's much more considered as being a much more mature technology.
Yeah, and I think just like stepping back and the big side of things, of the maturing side of things, is that manufacturing is changing. We have less technicians coming into the industry, and there's got to be other ways to take care of these patients. And the amount of patients that we're seeing is starting to mushroom. So we have less people taking care of a larger group of people. And so there's got to be a way that we have to scale and to make sure that we're keeping up with taking care of patients. And so I think that's the important part to remember, is that yes, it's maturing, but we're also getting an increased number of patients. Technology is increasing, and being able to leverage that to make sure that we continue to take care of patients is a big deal.
Okay, that's super cool. I think it's really, really encouraging kind of sign for it. Does this also mean that we could now lobby for more stuff and we're on the rise, and that there's people that will listen, or is this kind of like a one-off, or is it kind of like a sign that we should do more stuff like this together as an industry?
Well, I think there's 2 signs. One is, yes, that they are listening, and I love that. And the second is they didn't make a new 3D printing code. They're just saying that additive manufacturing is an appropriate way to manufacture a prosthesis. And I think that that's a pretty important distinction, is when they took a look at the data, they felt that the function of what was at least presented to them falls under a current L coding system that shows the actual function of the device. So they're not saying that 3D printing now makes a better prosthesis. They're just saying you can use 3D printing to make a prosthesis. So, but with all that being said, is now that we have the adjustability stuff coming down the pike, the extra partial hand stuff, what if we were to use some sort of latticing to create extra padding or that sort of thing? Are there new codes on the horizon? I think that's an interesting, thing. But what you don't want to do is start splitting hairs of like, oh, I need a new code because this is. I mean, the reality is this code set is pretty broad when you start looking at it. And what you don't want to do is, and a lot of companies have done this, invest a lot of money in thinking that you have something really amazing, and then find out that it's just coded the same way as everything else. And I'll give you one example. Is there was a manufacturer that created a gel liner, we'll call gel air quotes, that had like little holes in it, and they said that it helped regulate temperature better. And they went after a new code for that. And when the coding committee or the people saw it, they're like, yes, we see that your liner has holes in it, but it's still a gel liner. And so, this massive investment that they had, now it's coded the same as everybody else's, and there's nothing that really separates it. And I think that's the part that people have to be, really careful with. The other part is the PDAC will release a new L code, and they look for what's called utilization, so people that use the code. But just because they release a new L code doesn't mean that there's reimbursement that comes along with it. And so that's kind of the scary part, right? So, we 100%.
So I thought that was
you have a new technology. Congratulations. Right now, your reimbursement is 0 on that. And so that is the other issue that you run into is you have this thing and they say, yes, we agree. That's a different technology that doesn't exist, but we don't know how to price it. And we're just going to look at how many people use it. Well, if you're looking at on my side and I see 0 next to your code, guess what? I'm not using it because I don't want to fight that battle of trying to get paid for that. And maybe, I need to change my mind on that. But the reality is if I'm going to use your product, you're going to ask me to pay for it, right? So, and then I'm going to have to go fight to get the reimbursement for it. And if right now it's 0, and I get 0, then I'm actually upside down on the product. So it's complex. That's all I'm saying is it's more complex than just getting an L code.
Okay. That's good to know as well. And then, I just think this is really great news. I thought this is like a good step forward, and I'm happy we discussed it. I'm happy this is like kind of like a thing that's ongoing. And I'm happy that more people now have to notice. You kind of have to talk about this, right? You have to be like, oh, okay, now we have to look at it. Now we have to see if this is for us. So I think it'll mean, more Additive or more 3D printing, business related decisions will be taken. More people will make parts. So I think it's gonna be super good.
Yeah, well, and I think what you just said is now we have to have the discussion. And this could be a tipping point. Well, and it was going to be a tipping point with the bigger companies, because now they can go into the additive manufacturing of space and know that they're going to invest in it, and then know that they're going to also reap the rewards. And that's a conversation that you have with the people that aren't 3D printing is like, hey, why are you doing it traditionally fabricated? There are now outcome measures that show that some of these products are actually better for your patients than a traditionally fabricated one. I also think the discussion becomes how do you then start? What is the runway to get going? Because those people are quote unquote behind. So how do we get them ahead of or back on, the road to using additive manufacturing to its greatest potential? And I think that's going to be the fun part. And I think the other part, though, is I don't think you just use additive manufacturing just to do additive manufacturing. I think you use additive manufacturing to make it better for your patients. And so my hope is that change of thinking is, okay, so if I'm not going to do traditional fabrication, what are the value adds that I can get out of additive manufacturing, but still get reimbursed because I'm doing the manufacturing this other way? And I think that's really important.
Okay. I think that sounds like a really sensible approach forward. And, I really hope people get their heads around this and that we see a veritable explosion of more additive manufacturing activity in prosthetics and orthotics. Because I think for a lot of things, you sketch the big picture already, like less labor. We need to somehow magically make more stuff with fewer people. So there has to be some form of automated making technology, whether it be additive or CNC or something else, that has to be used more intensively. And there has to be more design ability. There has to be more, technical ability to make the correct things with the right properties as well. So there is the kind of like this bigger trend, and now I guess we're inching towards that. So I think that's really, really great. So thanks for explaining that, and thank you for all the PDAC people, whoever was involved on the government side, also on the lobby business side and stuff. I think that's absolutely wonderful what everybody did, and really, really great job to take this leap forward for everyone.
Well, this was a fun one. Yeah, and I'm super excited because that means that we get to take a next step forward, right? And this additive manufacturing journey that we've been on, actually the last 3 years, we've been talking about this, I can't believe it, for 3 years. And now it's kind of gone mainstream. And so I think that's a really cool thing. So I'm looking forward to how this conversation evolves.
Okay, cool, man. All right. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast. Have a great day.